Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sage Business Cloud Accounting topic webinar. My name is Joanne Barnard. I will be your host and panelist for this session. Thank you to those of you who have said that you can hear me. That means that the sound is working, which is great. Guys, today what we're going to be discussing is over the last few weeks, we've gone over the customer flow, the supplier flow, and the item flow. We're now going to put those all together and do the accounting flow as a whole. Some of you have sent through some questions. It's not specifically what this webinar is about. Some of those questions I can answer, but guys, just to make it very clear, with regards to accounting queries, like, hey, what accounts do I process this against? No one at Sage, not even support, can answer those questions. We're not allowed to because we are not accountants. If you have those types of questions, you need to speak to your accountant or your bookkeeper and go, listen, I need to know for my business what is the best way to process this and which accounts I need to use. We cannot tell you for the fact that it may not be what you need, and that may then cause an issue with your financials. So we can't tell you what accounts to use. You need to know what accounts to use, how to process it. That we can probably show you. That being said, guys, there is an accounting workflow as a whole. So it's how the system works together as a whole. And what I'm going to take you through is that process. I do apologize if my voice changes in this. Unfortunately, I do have a bit of a cold, so I may eventually sound like a chipmunk. I just ask that you guys please bear with me should that occur, because the longer I talk, the worse it gets. This is also going to probably be a fairly long webinar, and this webinar is recorded. So guys, I cannot say that it's only going to take an hour. It may take longer. If you can't stay the whole time, you're welcome to log out and the recording will be sent to you. So let's get started. As a whole, we know that we create a company, and within that company, depending on your needs, you will then create items, suppliers, customers, and accounts. Now, over the last few weeks, we've gone over all of these things. I've done a webinar on how to create accounts and account reporting groups. If you need links to those recordings, please let me know. Please go and look here and you can look at what we discuss. So customizing forms, how to create and use accounting groups, etc. And hopefully that all together will help you to understand this webinar. So once we've created that, we now need to start processing. If you are using inventory items, in this instance, normally, as we said, if you create an item, you can take on the opening cost and the opening quantity. So those would be your opening balances, which mean that you may have items on hand. However, you do need to make sure of that first. So you would need to come and, for example, check your reports and check your list of items and make sure, for example, your item movement, your item quantities, you need to make sure that those things are all correct. So you would come in this instance, we want to make sure that we actually have quantities. So we're going to check our item quantities. And if you want to view everything, you leave the from blank, the to blank, and you just say view report. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have quantities on hand, because in order to start selling, we have to make sure that we have quantities on hand if there are physical items. If there are service items, you can start selling immediately because you can't bring a service in stock, but physical items you do bring in stock. If, however, you are processing directly to the general ledger accounts, you can start processing immediately. Now, with suppliers, we discussed suppliers and we said you can set up suppliers in specific ways. So you can use accounts or suppliers for expenses. So for example, if you are going to pay your City of Joburg account, you could either set that up as a supplier and process directly to that supplier so that you know, okay, this is what I need to process. You can enter that as a supplier invoice. You probably would put it against an account though, guys, not an item. And then you could process those as suppliers and then pay them accordingly. It will still affect your profit and loss accordingly. On top of which, if you're using the account and it's an expense account, it will go to the expense account. You can, however, also process directly by processing journals. So it's dependent on how we're setting up those suppliers. Again, this is where your accountants need to come in, because I can tell you both of these work. But if your accountants don't like that, if you do this, they're going to make you do a lot of reversals. So you have auditors and accountants who are like, hey, this is how the business should be run from an accounting point of view. Both of those work. Please make sure you speak with your accountants and go, listen here, for these type of things. So for expenses like my rent, my lights and water, you know, my whatever it is, do I pay those to a supplier, or do you want me to do journals directly to the accounts? Very important to have that all worked out. Once we've created that though, then normally the way that this would work, generally, depending on opening balances, and guys, you can see there's a lot that is depending on, but I'm going to go from a brand new company. We are going to use inventory items. Normally what we would do here is we would either process a item adjustment, so we would bring in that stock. This would normally be if we have existing stock and we did not bring it in as the opening stock. Now, either you can come in and go adjust item opening balance, or you can go in and go adjust items or item adjustment. If it's brand new though, normally you would have set up your suppliers and you would get these items from a supplier. So you would go and do a supplier purchase order. We would then do that purchase order as we did, and we'll go add purchase order, and we would enter our purchase order accordingly. So we would select our supplier and we would then select our item accordingly, and we would then enter the quantity that we're bringing in as well as the exclusive price, because I've chosen to use exclusive prices. If you want to use the inclusive price, you tick the top and you go use inclusive price, and then you can enter that inclusive price here. So guys, you would process your supplier invoice and then select your VAT type, and it will then advise you accordingly. You can then save anew and continue processing, or at this point, you would then get hold of them, send them that purchase order, and wait for your goods to arrive, because you cannot sell anything until you've received your stock. In order to receive your stock, as I said to you, if we go into our transactions and we go into our purchase orders, what we can see is we can see order number, we can see the date, we can see the total, we can see if it's printed, it'll be ticked or not. But on top of that, we can see the status. So here we can see this is pending. We can then do an action where we can update the status, we can create an invoice, we can copy the purchase order, we can view the history. But at this point, we can, for example, go, okay, I've received my stock, I want to create an invoice. This is going to take me to create the invoice, and everything is going to be filled in. If they did not have all 15 quantities, we can change this to 10, for example, and that will update it accordingly. If the amount changed, we can change the amount. I'm going to leave this as the full amount. And at this point, again, we can save and new. We now have a supplier invoice. At this point, you can either choose to pay the supplier if that is your workflow, but we're going to branch off again because this depends on you. Do you pay your supplier immediately, or are you now going to start selling your goods? You put everything on, you know that you pay your suppliers at the end of the month. That's where you can come in, and we can now jump to doing our customer quotes, our customer sales orders, or our tax invoices. Now, what is the difference between these three? We have gone through it. So guys, I'm going through this very quickly. But a quotation is when a customer comes to you and goes, listen here, I just want to see, what would you quote me, for example, for an order of 30 notepads? They want to see the different quotes. You do that quote, And then, depending on that quote, the customer will then advise you if they've accepted it. You will be able to see if it's expired, and based on if it's accepted or expired, again, you have actions, and you can then create the sales order. Now, the sales order can help you if you work on a case-by-case scenario where you do quotations, and again, this is where the workflow can change. I do a quotation, I then do a sales order, I then do the purchase order, I then get the goods, and then I do my customer tax invoice. So guys, we can see there's a different way of doing these flows, but it depends on how you, as the person using the software, are going to use it. A quotation does not require stock. A sales order does not require stock, but it is normally there for you to know if you are going to do a sales order, how much stock you need to order. So a lot of people will go quote, sales order, purchase order, supplier invoice, customer tax invoice. So that's often how flow works. Another way a flow can work is exactly the way I was doing it. Purchase order, we purchase a lot of stock. We're a stationery shop. We need a lot of stock in our stationery shop. People are going to do cash as, so it's cash on delivery basically, but it's as you buy. So they're going to walk in, they're going to grab their stationery, they're going to come to the front, they're going to pay for it, they're going to leave. So in that case, you need the cash. So you do the purchase order first. You then don't need to do a quote or a sales order. You can go straight into tax invoice because this is happening immediately. So it depends on your business. Are these orders that get placed, or is this, for example, something like a stationery shop, or are you a cafe on the corner where you're selling bread and, you know, chips and chocolates and things where you order in bulk and then the purchasing happens? Or is it a case of you're a specialized shop, or you do, as I said, you don't use inventory items, maybe you provide services? And in that case, like this training, let's say you guys had to buy this, you would ask, hey, I need you to train my staff. I want you to train them for a day. What would the quotation be? You would send out a quotation. You'd probably want half paid up front. Then you would send out your trainer and the other half would be paid. So you need to look at your business. What are we doing? How does our business function? And then how would that flow work? But it normally starts with purchases and sales. And as I said, you can start with quotes, sales orders, purchases, or purchases, supplier invoice, tax invoices. Then again, when we come in and we do those, what are we actioning? Now we can check that we've already done some sales. From when we get to the sale, so we've done our purchase and we've done our sales, we've seen that there are different branches that can occur. What normally happens then is we need cash flow. So at this point, we need our customers to pay us. Again, you need to know, is this happening at the point of sale, or have I given my customer terms? So I roughly can work when my cash flow is going to happen. Okay, I'm a specialty shop and I give people 7 days from date of invoice. So I invoice them, they fetch their goods, and they've got 7 days in which to pay me. Or, you know, whatever the terms are, normally as you build up that relationship, you may choose, okay, I'm going to give you a month, that's cool. You check the credit rating, you know they're good for it, you give them 30 days. From date of invoice or from date of period. They will then pay you accordingly. So normally what you would do from the tax invoice is we would go in and create a receipt. Now you can either do this here and you can create the receipts here, or normally what happens is this is where we jump from our purchases and our payment, our purchases and our invoicing, our sales, to our banking, and we come into our banking here. And our banking is where those receipts will be created. Because normally at this point, we have a lot of transactions happening and we either download and import our bank statements or you use bank feeds. Now, guys, I'm going to pause here because I did have someone send me an email and say, am I going to cover bank feeds? I did reply, but I just want to explain to everyone else why I don't. For me to cover bank feeds, I would have to link to my personal bank accounts. I'm sure, as you can all appreciate, I don't really feel like putting my personal banking information out on the internet. So I do not have a dummy account to use, unfortunately. So I cannot show you how bank feeds work, but I can explain how they work. So if you had to, for example, manage bank feeds or set up your bank feeds, what you would do is you would set it up accordingly. So you would say that you're going to use either Netcash. That is something that you would sign up for and set up for. So you would have to go to netcash.co.za and accept their terms and conditions. Or you can do your Sage bank feeds. I'm going to go as far as I can without entering my personal information. From here, you would then accept the terms and conditions and you would continue. This is where it would then ask you to add your bank feeds. And this is where you can search for your bank. It will give you the most common banks like ABSA, FNB, Standard Bank, Nedbank, and Capitec Bank. But you can also search for your bank like Investec. And you can select those accordingly. So you would select one of these. And then from here, you would need to sign in with your credentials. This is where I cannot go any further. So you would sign in with your credentials, and once you've signed in with your online banking credentials, you would select your bank account, and then you would set up the other screens accordingly. Like, yes, I want you to now download from this date forward. Now, where this gets complicated is if you already, for example, were in your banking, sorry guys, transactions, banking. If you were already in your banking and you imported a bank statement, this could cause duplication. So it's very important where you check here for duplicates and you can then edit those duplicates accordingly. So you can swap from importing bank statements to bank feeds, but you need to check if there are duplicates and it should warn you, are those truly duplicates? And all that you need to do is then choose not to keep the duplicates, or you need to go and just delete the transactions. Once you've done this, then you should just have your automatic feeds coming through and you just need to check them accordingly. If you do choose to import your bank statements, normally it will reconcile those transactions and it will then import them accordingly. So for example, if I select my, just want to see, if I accept, I can then check my review transactions or I can check my new transactions. My review transactions are transactions that I've gone through and I've checked and I've made sure that they are correct and I've set them up accordingly. Now, if I'm not happy with these transactions, I can alter them and I can delete them. But if you are not finding that everything is reconciling, you will need to do a bank recon at this point. This is also where we are putting in these values. So we're seeing that this is a payment that we've received. If I had to, for example, come in here and do customer, still cycling. I can put whatever invoices there. We can see that if you click the down arrow, it will allow you to go further. You can click plus, you can click minus. It will ask you, are you sure that you want to delete? We can add attachments. We can split the transaction. And we can see here that we're entering the value accordingly. If I do that, it shows less. If I click on there, it shows more. If I want to reconcile, I can tick to reconcile. I can leave it unreconciled. If I've got details here, I can say whether there's a discount amount. I can say what the payment is. So details, no details. Here's where I can match. And this is where normally where we create the receipt and we match it in the customers, we can do it here. So I'm looking and I'm going, okay, this is what I'm matching to, and I'm having a look. And I can choose to either split the transaction. Sorry, guys, I'm splitting the transaction. And unpaid invoices, paid invoices. So it's the other one that I thought was split, isn't split. I get confused between those two. That's allocate. Here I can allocate, I can enter a discount, and I can save accordingly. Now it's already matched. And then I can save my changes. This is also where we can pay our suppliers. So we can come in. Again, we can select our suppliers. We can select our art supplies. We can make our payments. And we can choose to allocate here and go, okay, yes, I need to allocate to that. Tick to allocate, save, and it will auto allocate. So you can do that here. If you enter your details and you forget to allocate though, when we go in and we check our transactions and we go allocate receipts, when we select that specific account and we go refresh, we will be able to see the unallocated items. And we can then select them and move them across accordingly until it is allocated. Once it says amount due 0, we can save accordingly. So you can come and do it in customer and suppliers as well, and it is very important. So at this point, our workflow normally is purchases, sales, or sales, purchases, normally purchases first, then sales. But as I said, the way that we use some of these customer documents don't require there to be quantities. However, if you do need quantities, you would do supplier invoices. So you would create your items first, then you would look, do I do physical items? Do I do service items? Am I just using my accounts? Then you will process accordingly. If you're using your accounts, you don't necessarily need to bring in accounts by doing supplier invoices. It's very difficult to do that. Then you can just sell. But most people do use items in one way or another. We then make the sale. And once we've made the sale, we then need to look at our cash flow, which is our banking. So those are receiving money from our customers, paying our suppliers, and then also paying our expenses. So again, when we're in banking, it's not just to receive money from our customers or to pay our suppliers. It's also to pay those expenses. So at the end of the month, you can come in and you can go, okay, yeah, I am processing to my account. And this is where I said, guys, you don't necessarily need to add your rent, Or, for example, your banking charges. You're not going to have F&B set up as a supplier for banking charges. You can process directly to banking charges here, and we can go. Bank charges, and we can process our banking charges accordingly. There is no matching here because this is an expense. So this is where you would have a mix of customers, suppliers. That's where the type comes in. This is where you can also do VAT. If you are transferring from one bank to another, you would do your transfers. And if you are paying SARS, this is where you would process and say that you're doing your VAT payments. This is where you would choose, you would make those payments, receive your cash. This is where your cash flow comes in. And then everything just continues to flow month on month. After you've done your banking, this is where you want to do your reconciliation. This is where you want to check, okay, based on what I've done this month, once everything is done, you're going to go in and you're going to reconcile. So for example, I've captured the whole of September. I want to make sure that September balances. That is where you want to come in. You want to check, sorry guys, 1st of September to the 30th. You're going to enter your statement balance. This is your statement balance as at the last transaction in September. It's either your opening balance for October or it's your closing balance for your September statement. You will enter that value accordingly, and hopefully that statement balance and the balance of the bank. So please select your bank, but that will correspond. If they do not correspond, what is going to happen is that you are going to have a difference in the amount, and you are going to have to come through and check. Using your bank statement, you're going to have to check the values and check, is there duplication? Did something show twice? Is the value incorrect? Where is the problem? Based on that, you're going to have to correct it via your bank. So you'll have to go into your banking transactions to correct that, not in your reconciliation. You'll have to come in, check accordingly. Sorry guys, F&B. Check your F&B accordingly in your review transactions, and you will need to change them accordingly. Either delete if there is, as I said, duplication. You're like, whoa, half of these things are duplicated, and then make sure that your reconciliation reconciles. Once you have done that, the process then repeats. Basically, so again, you do your purchases, you do your sales. Sorry guys, I did miss out a part. In that, you will also, in order to get the payments and the receipts, that is where you will do your customer run, your supplier run. Now the supplier run is more for you because your supplier will send you your statements, and when you check your actual statements, that is not a run for you. That is for you to check that what they've sent you is correct. They haven't missed any transactions. You haven't missed any transactions, so that you know what you're paying. But you will do your customer run. You will make sure that your customers are getting that statement, asking for the payment. You roughly know when those payments come in, and then you do your banking. This is also where, if you do need to process your journal entries, you can go and process those journal entries accordingly. For example, your payroll journals, that is also a good one for recurring journal entries. You do your payroll journals and you make sure that you repeat those processes accordingly. And honestly, because I didn't go into that in depth, that is actually a very basic workflow. From there, you then run your different reports. Guys, does that make sense in terms of a very basic workflow? Do you understand the basics of how all of those things fit in together? Obviously, then we can expand on that on, this is a monthly workflow. What happens at a yearly workflow? Because at a yearly workflow, when you're doing your year end, that is where you're going to have to come in and you're going to do those item adjustments. You're going to do what is called an item adjustment, but you're going to use a quick entry rule. And the other thing we call this, if you're using physical items, is a stock take. You can import it. What happens if there are expenses that do not show in the bank statements? I don't understand what you mean. So I don't know what expenses you would have that are not on your bank statement. And in that instance, it's not something I've dealt with, and then you please need to speak to your accountant. So like I said, there are certain things that as support, we support the program, not necessarily the accounting in it. If there are specific things that your company does, you please need to speak to your accountants on how to process that correctly for your business. Cash payments. Okay, so the cash payments you would still need to process through your banking because there are cash payments and you would then select them as cash payments. Please make sure that I am correct with your accountants. And guys, also, while I'm giving you how a basic flow works, again, I need to reiterate, you need to make sure that these different flows, you've discussed them with your accountants and say to them, are you happy with me processing like this? Because processing can be unique to your business situation. We are telling you an overview of accounting, what the system can do, and you then need to extrapolate the data I'm giving you and make it work for you. If you can give us the accounts and basically what you want to do, we can possibly say, look, you can do it this way, but we will always refer you to your accountants and go, they need to tell you exactly how they want that processed. Do they want it processed through journals or do they want it processed through the bank? Because you can do both of those. You can process directly to journals or you can process directly through your bank. So if you are in banking, as I said, if you come in, it still needs to go through your bank. Even cash sales still need to go through your bank because you will need to deposit that money at some point. So that would probably then be something that you deposit in. So you need to ask them how you would process those. As I said, you can process those directly against that customer account. So this is where, for example, what you may do is instead of going through the bank, you may do those transactions, go to customer receipt, and you may process directly a customer receipt. If we look here, that customer receipt will then go against the customer. At some point, that money will need to be deposited. And you will need to reflect that on your bank statements unless you keep that money in a safe somewhere. But payments that are made directly, most people will do a customer receipt. It will reflect on the bank, it will reflect on the customer statement, not necessarily the bank statement, but that money will be there for you. At some point, my advice would be please put it in the bank so that it can show on your actual flow and it can show your cash flow correctly. Because if you're doing a lot of work with cash, it's going to be very difficult to show whether you have that money available or not. But if you are just working in cash and you're literally just doing receipts and supplier payments, I suppose that's the way that it's working because you're just working in cash. But you don't need to process receipts through the bank. You can do it through customer transaction receipts. I hope that answers your question. Same with suppliers. You can process supplier payments. You don't need to do it through the bank. You can do it directly through supplier payments. You then do need to allocate them though to make sure that they're allocated accordingly. Does that answer that question? Does that make sense? So guys, that, as I said, it's basic workflows, but it's the different sections. So normally a lot of people start with items, creating, so they'll create everything. You'll create your customers, your suppliers, your items, your accounts. Once you've created that, you then need to look at, do I need to bring things in? How does this flow work? If I bring things in, how do I want to bring them in? Do I want to do item adjustments? Do I need to actually adjust opening balances? So where am I starting? Am I starting on a brand new company? Am I transferring from one accounting package to another? So are these opening balances? If they are opening balances, am I working with physical items? Am I working with service items? Am I working with accounts? Depending on that, do I then need to use suppliers? If I'm using suppliers, do I need to bring items in, or can I already start selling items? So it depends. If I'm working with physical items, do I have stock on hand? If I have stock on hand, I can start selling immediately. When selling, do I need people to place orders, or are they walking into a store, grabbing things and purchasing them immediately? So what documents am I going to need? What documents am I going to work with? Based on that depends on how you're going to continue. Suppliers, same thing. Am I using physical items? Am I not? Who have I added as suppliers? Have I added things like my rent as a supplier, or am I using that as a GL account? Again, do I need purchase orders then, or do I just need invoices? You enter your things accordingly, depending on what you're working with. Do I then need to have payments for those sales and purchases? Do I want to do them from the customer supplier tab, or do I want to do them from the banking tab? A good question for that is, do they reflect on my bank statement? If not, I'll process directly via customers and suppliers. If they are on my bank statement, it's better to do it in banking and allocate accordingly. Once allocated, are there other transactions that I need to process? For example, do I need to process journals? Do I have journals that need to be done? For example, customers that are not paying me, do I need to do a journal to show increase? Do I need to process my payroll journals? Do I need to do my depreciation journals? So those are things that you need to look at. Which of these things are daily processes? Which of these things are monthly processes? And then you can work up your workflow accordingly. This is also where you can see, okay, based on this workflow, what people do I need for this? Do I need a debtor? So do I need a debtor's clerk? Do I need a creditor's clerk? Do I need a bookkeeper to handle the rest of the flow? How does that work? Yes, petrol, same thing. You'd probably process petrol. If you are using cash, then that's fine. But it would pretty much be the same thing. So again, guys, are you working with cash? Are you working with EFTs, checks, that type of thing? So you need to look at what you're working with, how your business is set up, what your business is working with, and then look at the different tabs and work out a flow that best suits you. Because as we've seen, we've got someone here who mostly works with cash. So for them, the banking side, well, yeah, okay, they get me. It's kind of important to have some cash flow. Most of their cash flow is in cash. So they receive their payments at time of sale from their customers. They have that cash available. They then pay their suppliers at time of delivery. So it's still cash on delivery. They've got that cash on hand. They pay the driver accordingly. There you go. There your payment is. If they are getting petrol, again, they're paying for that cash. So in that instance, journals may be the way that you actually need to process this, and the bank is almost completely useless for you. And you would then need to look at processing to journals to show, hang on, this was an expense that went to petrol, but it came from cash. So you may need to, for example, for your bank, actually have like a petty cash account set up, or have an account set up as petty cash, where you can record the cash on hand and then use that when doing your journals so that your debits and credits make sense. But that's where you need to speak to your accountant and just go, look, is this the correct way to do this, where I have this account set up for cash that I can process into, receive the money into, and then I can do my expenses from there to show what I spent on petrol, to show what I spent on office supplies at Checkers, because I always use cash. It's not going through a debit card. And that would probably be the best way for you, but please just double check with your accountant, because I would think then journals are probably going to be better, and you will process against what is called a cash account, where that amount would show. And then based on that, you can do your expenses to show, I had this 5,000 or 10,000 Rand, X amount went to my petrol, X amount went to rent, X amount went to electricity, because I'm not really using banking. So that's where journals would come in. But guys, as we can see, that's very different to someone who's possibly a specialty store. Sorry, I use stores a lot. It just makes sense in my brain. And maybe you're a model airplane store and people have to go online, check what they want to use, and those would be orders that they submit. So they might, or for example, maybe you're an online t-shirt store and it's in bulk, like we just recently got jackets. So we would have asked for quotes from these places and said, look, we want to order 200 puffy jackets with this stitched on it or with this print on it. Can you give us a quote for that? The companies will get different quotes. We'll choose which quote to accept. You would then accept that quote and do a sales order, which would go to a purchase order. The stuff would arrive. You would send out the invoice, either delivering the goods, and because it's 200 jackets at say 400 Rand, we would EFT you the money. We're probably not going to have that kind of cash on hand. So that would all go through a bank. So what I did would make sense. But if we are talking with, doing it that way, that's definitely how I would do it. So guys, does that help you to understand how these flows can work? Some of the questions you can ask yourself and how you can build a very nice flow to also see what staff you need on hand. Does it make sense how it all fits together? Please let me know in the questions. I did think this would take longer, but I think because we broke each section up, I could go through it a lot quicker than I thought I would. If you have any questions, please send them through the question icon. It's a little question mark with a speech bubble, and you just need to type your question through to me and I will answer it. Guys, I'm going to, if you have a question, please click the raised hand icon for me quickly so I know. Otherwise, I'm going to give us until 10:46, and then I've got a couple of announcements if we don't get any questions, and then I will end the webinar. But if you do have a question, please click the raise hand icon, because it might take you longer to type it than 3 minutes, and I don't want to, end the webinar if you're frantically typing. Thank you. Question mark speech bubble. This one on the screen where my mouse is circling, if you need to ask me a question. Okay, so guys, I've been asked, is it possible to send the material via email? Do you mean the recording of the session? I haven't put notes together. I could create notes, although that would take me quite a long time because I would need to create the others. But if you're asking for the webinars, I can send you links to the webinars, yes. I haven't actually created notes on this though. So please just specify if it's the recordings you're looking for or if it's actual physical notes. Okay, so guys, yes, I can send you the recordings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email in the chat. What I'm going to ask is that you just pop me an email and just advise which webinars you need recordings of. If it's all of them, you can just say that you need all of them. So if you look in the chat at the moment, I've put my email there. It's joanne.barnard@sage.com. And guys, if you do need to go and look, sorry, obviously mine looks different to yours because this is the program that I use to actually host with. So I just want to quickly go get the sharing link so that I can show you where you can tell me exactly what you're looking for. So if you do go to the actual login page where you registered, that link never changes. In order to register for multiple webinars, you need to select the date you want to register for. Tuesdays are always Sage Business Cloud Accounting. Thursdays are Sage Pastel Accounting. You can come here, and guys, if you need to, you can literally just highlight it, dump it in a mail and go, can you send me the links for all of these? Obviously, the ones I haven't run yet, I can't, but I can send you for the ones that I have run. So this is normally updated. This should be updated within the next 2 weeks, where I'll add November's. But you can tell me which ones you need the recordings for, and I will then send you those recordings accordingly. So you'll see Tuesday and then you'll see Thursday. If you're a business partner and you missed out on any, you can ask and I'll send them absolutely. Just pop me an email and let me know. Guys, I'm just going to also just put the link in the chat that I used. And hopefully you can just click on that to come to this page so you can let me know which ones you need. And if it's all, then you can just let me know and I'll just send you the recordings for all in a mail that you can keep. Okay, guys, are there any other questions? Because I saw there were 2 hands raised. I know I've answered the one, but I don't remember seeing the other hand. I've put down the hand for the one I've answered. I will definitely send the recordings via email, guys. No worries. Okay, I do see that the hand is up, but I do need you to please type your question through. So you need to go to the little speech bubble with the question mark and type it through. Then I can answer you because I haven't seen a question come through with your name yet. So you have to type it through. I can't hear you. If you are trying to tell me, please type it through. Guys, while I wait for that question to come through, just a couple of announcements. One of which would be if you need the recordings, please email me. Then other than that, if you have specific questions on the program, I need you to please go through support, not to email me directly, because there is no recording if you email me. There's no incident reference that gets created. So you please need to call or email the support team so that an incident reference is created, because that is monitored. At times, especially if I'm running webinars, I may not be available to answer your questions, and that could lead to a delay, especially if it's an emergency, you're getting an error. So I please need you to go through to support, because unfortunately I do sit in a lot of meetings in a day. I am not one of the support technicians. I'm a product specialist, which means that I'm the link between support and development. I spend a lot of my time chatting to dev, as well as a lot of time chatting to our digital teams to make sure that things like PEG, the knowledge base, YouTube videos, and these webinars are done. So I'm not on the front lines. And if I do not get your email timeously, that could be detrimental to you. So if you need support, you're getting errors, there's a specific question that you need answers to, please email support. If you want to CC me, that's fine. But please email support so that an incident reference is created and they can answer you accordingly, and we make sure that you are being assisted. If I can assist you, I will do my best. If you email me and you're happy to wait for an answer, I may also send you through to support, or I'm happy to answer when I can. I'll do my best. If I do not reply within 24 hours, please resend the email, because sometimes it may get lost. I don't purposely ignore you, but it may be that I thought I answered your email, or it may be in my junk and I haven't seen it. So please, 24 hours, if you have not gotten a response, please just resend the email so that I can see that and make sure that I do respond to you accordingly. Even if it is just sending you through to the correct team that can assist. I may not be able to help with everything, but I will do my best. Mostly, I want to assist with the webinars. That being said, if you also have suggestions on webinars that you would like me to run, please email me and let me know so that you can, in fact, so I can make sure that I schedule those. I have done that with a few people I've asked, and hopefully they can see that I've taken that seriously. How do I process journals? Please show me one or two. You would need to be more specific, because processing journals depends on what you're doing. I'll show you examples of one in a minute, but normally there needs to be specifics on that. It's dependent on what you're trying to do. So you need to know the from account and to account, and you need to know if you're increasing or decreasing, but I'll give you a brief overview. So guys, that's the question. Okay, so guys, yeah, let me know if I don't respond in 24 hours, please resend. If it's support related, please go through to support. And other than that, please look out for the upcoming webinars. The news flash should be released within the coming next 2 to 3 weeks. So please look out for that. And we do advise on Sage City about these webinars. So please make sure that you sign up to Sage City, that you have in fact registered yourself. So that is sagecity.com, and in sagecity.com, it's Sage Accounting. And then please make sure that you do advise that you want notifications. So here you'll see that normally we advise you what's coming up. You can register here, but if you didn't receive the news flash, or you saw it and got busy, this is where you can at least get a reminder. Come in here, click on it, register, and you won't miss out on any webinars. Otherwise, guys, I've got a question with regards to how do I process journals. So to process journals, I'm not sure, guys. I do have access to the accountant's edition. I do not know if this is on the normal edition, but basically you would go to the accountant's area and you would go process journal entries. And I have done a webinar on this, which you may want to also watch. From here, you would then choose new journal, and you would then choose basically, in this effect, are you debiting, are you crediting, or are you increasing or decreasing? Because I think there is another way to do this. I could be wrong. But you need to know if you're debiting or crediting. This effect is always doing it to the account. So this is based on the account. Your contra account, the affecting account, is always exclusive. So the account here is always inclusive. The affecting account is always exclusive. If you are choosing to debit, you are debiting the account, which means you are crediting the affecting account. You have to know which two accounts you are using. And then everything that you are doing here, the date, the effect, The tax, if you are using tax, this is all inclusive. So the account, the effect is happening to the account is inclusive, the amount will be what is happening to the account, basically the inclusive amount. The exclusive amount will then be affecting account. If that is debit, this will be credit, and this is excluding that. And that's how you would need to process. So you would need to know what you're processing. So for example, these are accounts. I would need to know, for example, if I'm doing bad debts recovered, I would select the account and I would need to know what the affecting account is from bad debts recovered. So what does this go against? Does this go against general expenses? Does it go against motor vehicles? It's entirely dependent on what you are doing, what these accounts will be. So you need to know, this is what I'm affecting. This is my inclusive account. That's what I'm putting here. So, for example, interest received. Sorry guys, I'm trying to see because I don't do this normally. So for me to know what I've got to do, this can be difficult, bank loans. But you would need to know which is my inclusive account, which is my exclusive account. That will then dictate, this is the account, this is the affecting account. Inclusive is account, exclusive is your affected by. Then what am I doing to the inclusive value? Am I debiting it? Am I crediting it? You'll then put in a reference and a description. Please make sure that it is unique. What is the description? What are you doing, for example? What is the VAT type? Is it non-supply? Is it 15%? Is it zero rated? Should there not be VAT? What are you doing? What is the amount? And then you will be able to see. And that is basically how it works. So in this instance, I've put in the amount. 200 is going to go to my interest received. It's going to be debited. 173.91 is going to be credited to bank loans. I don't know if that helps. So it's very difficult for me to give examples because, guys, I know how the program works, but I'm not an accountant or a bookkeeper. I don't have journals that I process daily, but that is how journals work. If you're unsure why you would need to use journals, this is where you need to get hold of your accountants. They might actually be doing the journals and they might tell you, thanks, I don't want you to touch that area, or they might be happy to go, these are the journals you need to do. For example, a payroll journal. You may need to do that. You would need your accounts to be set up in order to do your payroll, or a depreciation journal, which should be somewhere here. So for example, fixed assets. You can do that against your motor vehicle. The affecting account will probably be the depreciation account, I think. Again, guys, I know these journals need to be done. They're just not journals that I do often, but you can set that up and then you can do your depreciation journal. So you would know which accounts you need to do, how you need to set them up, and then ask your accountant, what is my inclusive? What is my exclusive? Am I debiting this inclusive? Am I crediting it? And then you know how to process accordingly. I hope that helps. Then, guys, another question that I have is, your email address changed. I've never seen that. Did it change for the webinar, or did it actually change on our internal system? So was it actually when logging in to accounting that it changed? I've never seen that happen. Personally, I've never seen it. It could be while doing maintenance. There could have been something that exported incorrectly and overwrote it. but it's definitely something that they need to be aware of. I would have asked them to investigate further and asked Dev how that could have happened. Because if it's your login that changed, that's actually a major issue. Because that would have had to change on our servers in the back end. And that would probably mean that they were probably updating something or changing something. And it could have been that the import file itself was not working correctly. Guys, if any of you have had this problem, please get hold of support, make them very aware of it, because your login details should not change automatically unless someone specifically asked for that to be changed, and then there should be a record of that. But I would ask for that to be investigated, because that's the only way I can think that would have changed. We would have had to change it in the back end. And it would have had to be something that we change either on request or accidentally. Please let me know about that, because I think that needs a bit of an investigation. Guys, are there any other questions that you have? Anything that someone maybe sent me on an email that I haven't covered? I hope I did. I hope I covered all the questions people sent me, but I may have forgotten some. Any other questions? Please let me know, guys. I'm going to give it until 5 past. If I don't get any other questions, then that is it for this webinar. I do hope that you found it useful, that you got something out of it. I will send the recordings probably tomorrow, because, guys, it takes a bit of time for the recording to, I don't know, whatever it's doing, it has to do stuff before it becomes available on my server. So either you'll get it later today or tomorrow. If you do not have it by this time tomorrow, please let me know so that I can make sure they come through. Any additional recordings I will send through during the course of today and tomorrow. Otherwise, I hope that you guys have an amazing day and a wonderful week, and I will see you at the next one. Please feel free to log out if you don't have any further questions. Thank you so much.